1 year later, it has been a real exciting ride. Getting to have my loved ones here by my side. Teenage me would love to find a reason to why, 'cause I'm shy now. This version of Joel wants to be your dog and guide. Another new season of Not Your Average Joel starts right now. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Not Your Average Joel. So today, as y'all can tell, I'm here by myself doing a solo recording. We have a really good episode for y'all. I hope that y'all have been having a great weekend or weekday, depending on when you're watching or listening to this. For me, it's the weekend as I'm doing this. My weekend has been pretty good, so hopefully y'all's have been good as well. So today we have a really good topic, and I think this is a topic that I'm sure I've briefly talked about before, but I would love to dig deeper into this topic. I think this is a good topic that many people probably think about from time to time, but don't really talk about it as much. We just kind of brush it under the rug, or whatever you want to call it, water under the bridge kind of deal. But today's episode is actually going to be on myths about men. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and jump right on into this. So the first one, I'm sure that y'all have heard me talk about this one numerous times. The first myth is that men aren't emotional and don't express their feelings. And I say that that is true for probably the generation before us now, the youth of this generation. Sometimes I get involved myself with the youth, even though I'm now 30. 30's a new 20s. So, hey, that's young if you ask me. But I think that, yeah, this whole idea that men aren't allowed to be emotional, I've brought this up many times. I've talked about it, a whole episode about emotions with my friend Anthony way back in season 1. And then even here recently, I saw an episode with my friend Brandon. We talked about authenticity, and we even talked about how men are only allowed basically to have a couple of emotions, and like the women can have it all, the rest. But it's like we're only allowed to show anger, which can reveal some violence and strength, or we can just be happy, but that's about all we're allowed to have, it seems like, according to society and today's culture. But I want to say that this is definitely a myth that men don't get emotional and don't express their feelings. I think that it's really important to point out that we actually do this, and we would much rather have that be known than anything. I know some people have this prideful sense that like I gotta be this big, strong, muscular man that if I let my guard down, then it means that I am some weakling and everyone's gonna look at me differently. And at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter what anybody else thinks because other than our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But if Jesus wept, then I think that we can have our moments of weakness too. And I think that it's okay because we were all born and designed with different emotions and different qualities and just all of these different things. We are all different in our own way. And this generalization that men don't cry or don't show any emotions is, in a way, putting men in a box that we only should be limited to use our emotions. We shouldn't explore the idea of being real with one another or being real with someone that you're close to, your spouse or your kids. Like you have to show this I'm strong mentality, which is good from time to time, but it's not always reality to be strong. Sometimes it's okay not to be okay. So I think that's the first myth that I definitely wanted to talk about because for one, it's one that I've mentioned over and over again. Unlike these other ones, I feel like it's not as brought up as much. So I definitely wanted to address that one first, just because I feel like that's one that I can just go through that one, just because I've brought it up so many times here on my podcast that I don't want to sound like a broken record. So that's why I started off with that one. So the second myth is that men constantly think about sex. And for some men, it is probably true that if they're not thinking of a relationship with their head, they're thinking, or not even thinking with their heart, they're thinking, they're thinking down there. Basically, they're thinking of how can I get the pleasure that I need out of a relationship. And sadly, that is the mentality that some men have nowadays. And that's the mentality that I feel like Hollywood tries to inspire men to go after. They're like, we have to have this, oh, how many girls have you been with? And oh, you got the hottest girl in school, you got the hottest girl at your workplace. And I think that many people have this idea that it's just okay to basically base your your love life based off sex. But then at the end of the day, that's not even love, that's lust. So your mentality is already messed up at that point. But I say that this is a myth because, again, with the generalizations that all men are basically pigs that only think about sex, while it may be true in many cases, it's not true in other cases. There are actual men that, as much as the idea of sex is a beautiful thing and something that some of us may look forward to, at the same time, it's something that we want to cherish with one person, and that one person being your future spouse. And some of us highly value women more than looking at a woman like you're just an object that I can just get pleasure from. I want to look at my future spouse as someone that is my best friend and not just a sex toy. So that's where I stand on that one. I know that the pool is very small as far as how many men will actually admit that they wait until marriage or that they're not all about sex. And I know even for women too. I know that that pool is very small for women as well. So it is something that I think we're all struggling with. Sex is so thrown in our faces nowadays with, if y'all saw the topic of pornography that I talked about. I mean, sex is thrown in our faces from our music to our TV shows to even the lyrics in music, the music videos, as I mentioned, the commercials, uh, reality TV, normal TV shows, even kid shows. Like it's just thrown in our faces, and that's why we all almost struggle with this mentality that there's such a thing as modesty out there, and modesty right now is kind of just looked down upon just because it's countercultural. It's not the way that this culture breathes and operates. I think that this is something that I would love to see more people being outwardly proud about that they do embrace modesty and that people are highly valuing each other. I don't like this idea of just we have to stoop down so low that we have to give ourselves away to anybody that we just meet on the first night. And I'm sure that many people have an ugly comment to say about that. They may say stuff like, "Well, you probably can't even get a girl," or or whatever the case may be. But I think that there's no gain for me out of just giving my body to multiple women when I can wait for the right person and someone that is highly valuable. And when I say that, I don't mean money wise, to where it's like a prostitute. So let's not twist my words here. What I mean is a woman that highly values herself with modesty, who loves herself enough to not just give herself up as if she's just being used by all of these men. And I mean, I'm sure there are many people that have been born again that have maybe had a past where they used to do that. So I'm not talking about y'all. I'm talking more about these women that just are proudly living this life. And men too. And it's just it's a shame that we've gotten to this point that we only care about sex when it comes to a relationship. And then people get confused as to why they get a divorce because once that sex gets old, you get tired of each other. And and you start seeing the real them and you're not willing to fight for that marriage because if the sex ain't good, then what's the point of the marriage is what y'all think. So I think that's where I stand with this, that not all men constantly think about sex and constantly want to get their pleasure, I should say, out of a woman and to just use her as an object and treat her as if she's just that's all she's there for is for me to get pleased. So that's another myth that I definitely wanted to talk about. The next one that I wanted to talk about is that men don't have body image issues, which is a huge myth. I feel like even men that are in better shape than I am, I'm sure have body issues. They're always finding ways going to the gym to tweak something. There's even men that go get plastic surgery. There are men that take things like steroids that try to make themselves look stronger and bigger and bulkier. And there's I feel like every man, as much as they don't want to admit it, have this insecurity with body image issues. Some more than others. Some it may just be a minor issue that like, hey, it is what it is. I wish I was skinnier or I wish I was more muscular, but I'm not gonna like cry about it. So I understand that. But I feel like from at some point in everybody's lives, we've been concerned about our body image. Whether you're too skinny, too fat, and you want to lose weight, or yeah, you're too skinny and you want to gain weight. It, I feel like we all have gone through that, and I could definitely say for me, I have done that. I'm even in that point in my life right now where I feel like I lost a good bit of weight, a good amount of weight, I mean, and then I gained it, lost a few pounds, then I gained and I lost a couple more, and now I'm trying to lose more weight. So it's still a struggle. It's been a struggle probably since I was 13, but I've just been more outwardly expressive about it nowadays, just because my podcast is all about being real and being transparent. So I think that's why I talk about it more. And I think that that is definitely a myth that we don't worry about our body image. Maybe women worry about it more than men, but to say that men don't think about it at all is a flat out lie. So here's the next one. Men are not afraid of insects. I know this is a funny one because you would think that whenever a bug comes around, the women, oh, get your husband, get your dad, get your son, get your brother, whoever, and come kill this bug. And I've gotten better with this. This is probably why I'm talking about this one because this is me. But there are certain ones that like like an example is camel crickets. I don't know if y'all know what a camel cricket is. If it's during the night, don't go look it up because you might not want to sleep. But a camel cricket is like basically it's like a spider looking cricket that jumps. And ooh, just the idea of it, some of them could get really big, they could jump pretty high, and that's like the one bug I'm probably deathly afraid of camel crickets. But I've gotten better with some of the other bugs. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of like flying cockroaches, but I've gotten a little bit better with killing those. So, and oh, like a couple of weeks ago, we had a huge spider on our window. Spiders are not my favorite, but we had to do what we had to do. So I had to overcome that. So to say that we're not afraid of insects, some of us are. I'll at least say. I'll admit that I'm afraid of some of them. So, ooh, just thinking about, I don't know what. I already look around. I don't think I've ever had it yet where a bug just shows up during the podcast recording, but that day is probably going to happen very soon, and I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to act at that moment. It's probably got to be a blooper or something like that one day. So, so anyways, the next myth is that men all like to fight. That's definitely not true because I'm not always trying to pick a fight with somebody that I like. I'm the tougher guy. To be honest, I've never been in a physical fight. I mean, I probably like whenever I was younger, very rarely did I ever get into like a, f- a fight with any sibling. I don't think that's ever really happened. I mean, yeah, verbal, like talking back and forth, arguing. But as far as like actual punching, hitting, stuff like that, didn't really happen at all, hardly. I mean, I'm sure it's happened before, but it's not something that we ever really did. So, yeah, so fighting is not something that I can already tell you. If somebody tried picking a fight with me, I probably would lose just because I don't know how to fight. So nobody don't even try to pick a fight with me because I'm not here for it. I'm trying to keep my job. I'm trying to keep my reputation and my integrity, and I'm all about taking the higher road to where you can resolve conflicts without throwing fists. You can you can use your words. So I'll fight with my words, but I'm not going to fight with my fist. I mean, I'd rather not fight at all, but if I'm going to have to, I'd much rather use my words. So the next one is that men like sports, which I do like sports, but I'm not so as invested in sports as other men are. Like I can't tell you every single player's name, but I mean I could tell you the current players' names, like within certain teams. Like I root for Alabama football, Roll Tide. I know we are having a little bit of a struggle this season with our quarterback, with Jalen Milroe, but I know we've had four pretty good quarterbacks in the past. We had Jalen Hurts, we had Tua Tagovailoa, we had Mac Jones, and we had Bryce Young, and they are all in the NFL starting quarterbacks for each of their respective NFL team. So like I know different players, I know positions. I just don't know like every single rule. In some cases, I mean I know when a flag is thrown, sometimes it's passing interference, sometimes it's holding, sometimes it's horse collar or whatever. Sometimes it's targeting. So I'm just not as super invested. I'm not constantly watching ESPN. I'll watch Alabama football on Saturdays. I don't watch every. Alabama basketball game. I'm not so big and loyal when it comes to NFL, NBA. I like the Braves, but I'll just go. The only Braves games that I usually watch are the ones that I'll go see in person whenever I go to Atlanta. So it's not true that men like sports, like all sports, and that's all we talk about sports and cars and stuff like that, because cars is like another thing that I feel like so many men are interested in, but not every man knows everything about a car. Like I can definitely tell you, I don't know everything about a car. I mean, I learned how to do some things with my car, but there's some things that there's a lot that I still need to learn that is probably embarrassing that I don't know how to do. So I don't think I'm gonna even reveal what those are as far as things. All I can tell you, I know how to pump gas, I know how to put air in a tire, and that's probably about it. I'm just kidding. I'm sure there's more, but I mean, I know how to check the pressure, tire pressure, and I mean, I'm sure there's many more things that I know how to use it. I know how to drive, use the steering wheel, the gas pedal, the brake pedal, all of that. I know where the engine's at. I know where. Oh, I know how to put antifreeze. Come on now, y'all, give me some brownie points. So yeah, I'm just not like a super invested into sports and cars as typical average man, I guess would be. Probably why I'm not your average Joe, because I'm not your average man. So okay, that was lame. But anyways, the next myth, men don't get abused or harassed. Now, if you listened or watched any of my episodes long enough, even heck, even episode one, y'all would know that I have been sexually harassed before by another man in middle school. So really, I guess it wasn't man, a boy. I was 13. This guy was 13. And funny story about this situation. I actually a couple months ago had an adult prom, and me and this sexual harasser have a mutual friend or a mutual classmate. I'll say I don't really consider this person my like best friend or anything, but we stay on good terms. But anyways, she ended up inviting this guy, the same guy that sexually harassed me in middle school. And I thought this guy moved to Tennessee for good. He's back here in Alabama. I saw him face to face for the first time in 17 years. And he's definitely a changed man for the better. So there was forgiveness there. I bring that up just because I've dealt with so much pain and humiliation and embarrassment from that. He never apologized or nothing for it, but just him being a different person, being a different kind of man, made me at least feel like there was closure with that. So, anyways, as y'all can see, I've been sexually harassed before in middle school. Abused, definitely, I know when people think of abuse, they think of men abusing women or children, unfortunately. Sorry if that's a trigger for some of y'all, but it's reality, sadly. But mm, there are many cases when women abuse men, and men will definitely not ever admit to that. They will never say that they actually were abused by their wife or girlfriend. And I mean, I can see why, because it makes it look like, oh, you get beat up by a girl kind of mentality that society or culture likes to put on people, that makes it look like you are weak and like you're a joke if you get beat up by your girlfriend. But of course, the other way around, a man beating a woman is definitely frowned upon. But for some reason, the other way around, it is frowned upon, but it just isn't as um condemned. Maybe is that the word? Maybe it's just not looked at as negatively as men abusing women, but it does happen. So that's definitely a myth that men don't get abused or harassed. So the next one is that men just want to work and that basically we are our job. Basically, like we only live for our jobs. And yes, there is an importance and significance of men being the head of the household, but at the same time, I don't think all men fully invest their life into their job. There are many men that do, but I don't think every man is only thinking about their job and not caring about their children or having a relationship with their children. I feel like if I was ever a dad and a husband, I don't feel like I would ever be that type to care more about my job than my family. And I understand that times can get tough nowadays if you are in this economy here in the USA. You'll know that prices are going up, and sometimes men are having to work more than one job. Sometimes their wives are having to get jobs, and sometimes men are having to work overtime and being away from their family to just keep up with life and to stay living in their house and all of that. So I definitely get it when it comes to just the tough difficulties of society. But yeah, I just think that not all men are so invested in their job that like they don't take any time for their family. But this is an unfortunate one where I would say that this is the least mythical thing about men because I feel like this is it's more common for a man to want to work, 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 and have their wife take care of the kids at home. So, and I understand that, but it shouldn't, your job shouldn't fully be what takes over your life because then we get into the idea of idolatry. And, that's definitely not a good thing. So, idolatry is basically making your work little g god. So not everyone's like that, thankfully. As of right now, I'm not like that. I mean, I use my job as a single man to travel, as y'all can see here in the background. Or, if you're listening to this, yeah, for y'all that don't know, I do have a bunch of photos from all over the world and on my travel wall is what I call it. So that's that. It's from 41 different states that I've been to, four different countries. So yeah, I definitely use my job for that benefit, I guess, as of right now, and trying to pay off things and trying to get financially in better shape, which I have a long way to go with that. I still have improvements for sure. So there's that. And then I have five more myths that I want to talk about. I mean, excuse me, four more myths that I want to talk about. So this next one is that men hate to commit. So I do feel like when it comes to relationships, engagements, marriages, I do feel like the woman is more committed than a man, but I know there are plenty of men out there that are fully invested and fully wanted to be committed to one person. I know going back to Hollywood, talking about this idea that it's almost frowned upon for monogamy and for women and for men to have just one woman. And that idea almost sounds negative to people. It makes it sound like you're stuck and chained to one person for the rest of your life. But I see it more of as a amazing thing because I love the idea of just knowing that there is commitment and that you are painting a beautiful picture of how God designed marriage. And with that comes commitment, and with commitment comes obedience to our Lord by putting him in the center of your marriage, your relationship. So To say that men hate to commit is partially true, but it's not true for every man. I think I mean I know people are gonna say, well, this is myths about just men in general, which yeah, I see where you're going with that. But I just kind of want to break the stereotypes that let's talk about the other side of the equation. Let's talk about the other angle that you can see these statements in a more positive light, and that maybe it's not always true. So, so yeah, men are very committed. There are many men that are committed to their wives and or even to just their job, as we've seen in the last statement that I made. So there's that. And the next one is that men don't know how to communicate. uh, I mean, I feel like that this is one that maybe men do have a harder time with. I could even see that even with myself, with my past relationships, or even friendships, or even just just current friendships, or even just talking with family members, or maybe something that I may not be able to communicate as well with. So it is pretty true, but I feel like there are very well put together men out there. And I even have my good moments too. I know that I'm sure y'all do too, where you can present your ideas in a professional or in a clear, concise way that isn't so off-putting or isn't so unclear and chaotic. So I think that men we could do better as far as communication. I mean, women I feel like can do better too, but I feel like maybe because we're not as encouraged to be emotional, we kind of shut down and we're almost wired that way that you got to keep everything in your head. Don't even just say you're fine and move on, basically. So I think that we can do better in this. And I think it would help if the door was opened a little bit more for men to be able to be more vulnerable and honest with each other and with everyone really. So I feel like sometimes the door can be closed on us when it comes to us struggle with communication because we're not allowed to communicate our full honesty and transparency or our perspectives and all that. So the next myth here is that men don't take things personally. Mm, I feel like this is one that it can be a myth, but it is almost reality too. That like men can brush things off easier than women, but at the same time, I feel like men can take certain things personally. Like if you're attacking their family, if you're verbally saying something negatively about their family, about their job, when it comes to looks, sometimes men brush it off. Maybe men that have a little bit more of an insecurity, like me, I'm going to throw myself in there, may take something a little bit more personally. If somebody keeps calling me fat, I don't feel the best, hearing that. So I feel like this is one of those that is kind of like the one about the men that are so invested with their work. It is pretty true that men don't take things personally, but there are certain things I feel like maybe certain buttons that get pressed that men can take something personally. So the last one on here is that men don't listen to criticism. Uh, that's kind of a weird one because I feel like, yeah, maybe I'm sure this statement came from someone like a wife to a husband, like maybe a wife saying what a husband did wrong and the man is just like whatever. But I don't know about this one. I feel like men could probably listen. I'm sure we listen to criticism. I know if I hear criticism, like with how I do with whether it's work or or even with this podcast, I have to learn to do better with how I receive it and how I react to it. Because the first criticism that I got with this, I did not respond well to it. And I think it made it to where this guest does not want to come on my podcast anymore. It was a guest, a past guest, that gave me some criticism, and I kind of had a little bit of a little bit of a negative reaction to it, which definitely is unprofessional. And I can understand why this person maybe don't want to be involved, even though there was apologies. There were, we're good now. I'm good with this person, but I think maybe there's some hesitancy with this person wanting to ever get on my podcast again. So, so I almost feel like these last two can kind of go hand in hand because maybe when I took that criticism and when I heard that criticism, I took it personally. So I basically just turned those last two statements into a myth. So I'm sure there are many other things that men do or that society paints a picture of what a male is and does and all of that that are true. And then there are many myths out there about men. So I think that there's improvement for men out there. And of course there is improvement for women too, but as a man and this targeting men, this topic is about men. I think that we could do so much better. And I think that a lot of these myths are myths, like a lot of these statements are myths, but there are some that are not as mythical as is stated. Like I feel like some of these are more real and true than others. So I think there's just I mean I hope that everybody got something out of this. I feel like this was a good learning experience for me, just learning about what how society views men and what are some of the biggest statements about men that can be a myth. And I'm all about breaking barriers. I'm all about being real. And I hope that y'all got something out of this. And if y'all have any other more mythical statements about men, whether it's a myth or not, you could definitely comment on my YouTube channel, or you can send me a DM or a message. Uh, Not Your Average Joel Podcast on Instagram, or even my TikTok account, Not Your Average Joel Podcast. I have that on there. I've only been posting season one stuff so far, so stay tuned. Because right now, of course, as y'all know, we're in season four, but I've been so busy that I've only been doing season one stuff so far. So definitely give me a thumbs up, and I definitely appreciate y'all watching. And I hope y'all have an amazing rest of your day, whether you are watching or listening to this, and whether it's day or night. I hope y'all have a great day or night. And I will see y'all on the next episode of Not Your Average Joel. And I will talk to y'all later.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Not Your Average Joe. You should know the drill by now, but just in case if you don't, my podcast is available not only on YouTube, but also on most podcast streaming platforms, my Instagram page at Not Your Average Joel Podcast, and I'll also have a website that you can visit at NotYourAverageJoelPodcast.com. My episodes will be coming out every Wednesdays going forward, so be sure to come back next Wednesday for a new episode. Thank you once again for your support, and I will talk to y'all in the next episode of Not Your Average Joel. Goodbye.